Okay guys, yes, I finally did it. 9 pages of script, and I just can say one thing. Overworked. Without further ado, I hope you enjoyed the showcase of Scape's and Run's Parasite for 1.12.2 Forge, where a parasite claims your world. Phase 0 to 1. Other than the overworld in the Nether, all dimensions spawn with minus 100 points, meaning no parasites can spawn or obtain points regardless of what they do. Within the Nether, these entities cannot only spawn, but if they enter it, they may infect other mobs, which allows to advance to phase 0. The initial phase in which the overworld spawns in, within this phase only buglins can spawn. These odd greenish bugs are group entities with members from 2 to 6. Apart from existing, they will flee from aggressive mobs and players. They will transform into raptors after 75 seconds. More about it in a bit. Whenever players sleep, they add 3 points to the system. Phase 1 will begin when the threshold of 400 points is reached. Within this phase, the raptor is unlocked, spawning naturally in groups of up to 5 members. These won't attack players or hostile beings when alone, only within groups. Not only can they climb blocks and perform bigger jumps, but it will also place a tunnel block whenever it gets 5 kills. From these, buglins will spawn. If near a passive mob, raptors will release an effect cloud with the Coth Effect. Upon death, they drop raptors viscera. When this entity gets 30 kills, it transforms into a mangler. These small insects possess 5 long tentacles that are attached to their face. The melee attack inflicts targets with slowness 4. Just like raptors, upon death they may drop raptor viscera. Combined with gobblestone, the weakened lure is created, removing 2 points from the system. Upon being touched by these tentacle entities, one is inflicted with slowness in the Coth Effect. What is that? The Coth Effect. It is called Call of the Hive. As this effect can stack, higher potencies have different outcomes. The first stage doesn't have any consequences. The second level will start a horrifying transformation called assimilation. Even though these entities still look the same, they aren't. They spread the Coth Effect to other nearby entities. The parasite is eating them from the inside out and is controlling them already. If brought to low health, the transformation process is interrupted and the real horror is shown, the incomplete form. There are 2 variants, small and medium. The former has the shape like a spider crawling on all 6 legs. The medium form has 4 legs instead and a more humanoid shape. This shape is split open, revealing ribs. Both will attack by using melee combat. The third level is the final transformation. The now assimilated mob will fake to be a normal mob, spreading the effect to other entities. Each time the timer of Coth 3 finishes, it will be reapplied. If brought to low health, the assimilated mob will remove its disguise, turning into its assimilated variant. In case a mob that does not have an assimilated variant reaches this stage, it will turn into an incomplete form. The assimilated variant shows the real horror these entities now experience. All vanilla mobs can be transformed into a horrifying monster. Here you see the variant of vanilla polar bears, horses, pigs, sheep, and a wolf. The assimilated bear is a transformed polar bear, having now 2 claws at the front. The mouth appears to have split the mob apart. Also being skinnier, the horse has a sickly green color, and on the back some pustules are growing out of the body. Pigs have lost their eyesight as well. There are some pulsating growths at the midsection of their body. The sheep's back section has been completely eaten by the parasite, having also lost all of its wool. The same fate have assimilated wolves, losing the fur at the back of their body but also on their legs. The only special entity in this category is the cow. Cow does not possess any eyes and is much skinnier than the normal variant. It can not only melee attack, but also uses a charging attack, inflicting knockback and AoE damage. The next category are humanoid entities. The villagers are still wearing the clothing, however skinny tentacles grew from their hands. Occasionally, players may encounter an aesthetic variant of the villager. This entity seems to be even more consumed by the parasite, as its flesh is missing on almost every part of their body. The version of zombies and husks is the assimilated human, similar to the Steve's skin. The posture changed, being skinnier and having pustules growing from their hands. There is also a variant existing with less flesh all over the body. The assimilated adventurer are the remains of players. The effect itself works differently for players. One cannot spread it, only contract it. After being assimilated, the player dies to summon an assimilated adventurer, being able to wear any armor piece apart from the chestplate. All these mobs will be granted regeneration after killing an entity. They drop infected flesh and diseased hearts. The flesh can be used to create the bloody clock, measuring the evolution phase's progression. The diseased heart creates the faint lure, subtracting 5 points upon usage. When any assimilated mob dies, there are 2 possible outcomes. Firstly, they may explode, creating a poison and Coth potion effect cloud, and summoning some buglins. Whenever these entities explode, they leave remains which inflict the Coth effect as well. The player can either leave them alone, as they'll vanish after some time, or wash them away with water. The other outcome is that these mobs can summon a walking head with the newly sprouted tendrils. To make this part of the showcase even more horrifying, the lore states, it was revealed that all assimilated mobs are alive, both in body and mind, though the cells aren't theirs anymore. Dispatcher Nidus. From phase 1, any parasite can place a Dispatcher Nidus whenever it gets 15 kills. This reddish block will collect kill count points from nearby parasites. When it reaches 40 points, it will summon a stage 1 Dispatcher. If there's already one nearby, another one won't be summoned, but instead 120 points will be added. Dispatcher Stage 1 has multiple black tentacles rising to the sky. Within the middle of this creature are bloody threads and purplish tentacles. This mob is very dangerous, as it will make the parasites way stronger. These can teleport parasites around with their underground tentacles, force assimilated mobs to drop their disguise, and apply speed and 3 new effects to parasites. Firstly, Death Bar will prevent evolution points to be subtracted whenever the parasite dies. The second effect is Link, which doesn't have any consequences currently. And the last effect, Heightened Senses, increases the range of parasites where they can detect targets, as well as their following range. As a last ability, they can summon Caesars, dark-haired tentacles. These will snatch mobs or players, holding them in their grasp, preventing the entities to move. If a Caesar is hit with a projectile from a parasite, it will take no damage and apply twice the damage it would have taken to its current target. Dispatchers will drop Dispatcher Membranes upon death. Over time, these dispatchers can grow into higher stages. Possessing 2 heads, Stage 2 has the same abilities. Stage 2 has the same abilities, only that even Regeneration 2 is applied to nearby parasites. Another head is added at Stage 3, and now it applies also Strength. The potion effects are also prolonged and are higher potencies. The last stage evolves 1 head to be larger than the last 3 around it. These can also summon sentries apart from Caesars. Rooted from the ground, sentries have long tentacles and a circular mouth. Being a ranged class, they shoot 3 poisonous projectiles, melting players' armor. Each hit reduces the durability by 10%. Stage 4 dispatchers can also summon ancient pods, which fall from the sky, to only explode and cover the ground with a toxic cloud. Level 4 dispatchers also grant parasites absorption next to the other previously mentioned effects. Phase 2 to 3. If the threshold of 800 points exceeds, Phase 2 will begin. Within this phase, Raptors change their behavior, losing the pack mentality and attacking every mob. Assimilated mobs can spawn naturally, and sleeping will add 50 points to the system. A new mob will arise as well. The assimilated Big Spider. As a contrast of every assimilated mob, these have eyes and don't seem to be eaten up by the parasite, as they do look like normal in real life spiders. Either attacking with melee contacts or by shooting a projectile, which creates a series of webs slowing down the target. They disappear after some time. It is a variant with white dots on its back. At the threshold of 1800 points, Phase 3 starts. Mobs with the Coth Effect will not drop any loot. Buglins don't spawn naturally anymore, passive point gaining is active, and sleeping will add 5000 points. Dispatchers and Deterrents, meaning sentries, Caesars, and Kyphosis, won't take damage and die over time anymore. Its head being a shape of a hammer, the Kyphosis has multiple reddish growth throughout its body. Even though they aren't capable of movement, these creatures will attack by direct contact, smashing their head, inflicting massive knockback and AoE damage. A new mob called Assimilated Enderman can also now spawn. Being immune to water, these nightmare-fueling entities resemble an Enderman, with tentacles and postulates growing out of every corner of its body. They will teleport a raptor or an assimilated mob after attacking and managing to teleport away. Even though you may think a 2-block tall ceiling is the solution for this monster, you haven't seen it crawl yet. Spawning naturally in the End's outer island is the assimilated Ender Dragon. Its lower jaw will split into 2 pieces. Bloody ribs can be seen from the outside. She can either melee attack players or use ranged abilities by shooting a projectile leaving a dragon breath cloud. This inflicts poison and Coth. The projectiles itself inflicts the targets with the viral effect, increasing the incoming damage. Reinforcement system. With phase 3, the reinforcement system is unlocked, having grave consequences by summoning beacons with a maximum capacity of 100. Contrary to the intuition, these entities aren't plants. But what do these tree-like structures do? Incapable of movement or attacks, they hold a different value to the parasitic infection. Firstly, they can summon raptors and are able to break or even infest blocks. The summoning happens with biomass. Every beacon has a total of 4 biomass summoning points, whereas a raptor costs 1 point to create. These infested blocks can create even more beacons, whereas a chunk has a maximum of 3 beacons allowed. They will also damage the player. Armor pieces will lower the chance of its happening, the best armor piece being a leather helmet. Whenever a beacon is attacked, it has a chance to summon a bomb inflicting poison, and in fact, called viral. Upon death, these entities will release residue, cleaning all infested blocks it created. This residue has a chance to spawn under the beacon, however, this is very unlikely though, being at a probability of 0.0005%. Additionally, whenever a parasite dies, there's a scant chance for a beacon to emerge from the ground. Beacons won't take any damage anymore in phase 3 and will slowly grow into stage 2 beacons. These can now spawn raptors, assimilated humans, cows, sheep, big spiders, or a new mob called flying carriers by using biomass. The stage 2 has a total of 9 default biomass points. Apart from raptors, every mob costs 3 points to summon. Flying carriers are basically floating bombs, flying close to the target to only explode. This explosion can spawn raptors and buglins and inflict the viral effect. It's possible to not make them release any mobs by killing them while they are on fire. The area of the explosion will be covered by poison and the Coth Effect. Stage 2 can also break and infest blocks or throw bombs at players. Phase 4. With 100,000 points, Phase 4 commences. Primitive parasites can now spawn naturally. There are 7 different variants in this subspecies. When out of combat, these entities can regenerate. Another ability is to break blocks. After gathering enough items, a Parasitic Cyst will be spawned. More about it later. These creatures also have a special ability, summoning orbs, translucent auras, inflicting players with exhaustion. This adds a cooldown to all items and inflicts the Hunger 2 effect. Upon death, they have a chance to explode, leaving behind primitive remains. They're also able to transform into adapted parasites. More about these later. They can drop the altered tendons, creating slender lures. If used, they remove 50 points. All of them have a greenish and a bloody texture variant. The primitive Arachnida are slim spiders with no identifiable face, just a mouth. These can either attack directly or grab mobs and players by shooting a white string at them, pulling them closer. If the target is near enough, the Arachnida will leap towards it, using the string to push itself. The orb also inflicts entities with blindness. Upon death, it drops Arachnida Claw and Strange Bones. A usage is only implemented for the latter item, creating dried tendons. A Tarring Suit Flesh Mob is the Bolster. It grants regeneration 2 to nearby parasites and will only attack by direct contact. The orb applies speed 2 to parasites. Upon death, they may drop Bolster Husk or Strange Bones. The Long Arms is an odd entity, assembled out of long limbs and one jaw on each side of its body. The main attack is swinging their arms, slapping enemies or throwing them into the air. The damage is decreased the lower their HP is. These will even inflict slowness with their orb. Upon death, they drop Strange Bones and long arm armor fragments. The latter is used to craft bile shells. The next variant is the Manducatus, a canine-like creature, either attacking by direct melee combat or by using this special ability. During this state, they become completely invisible, slowing down their speed but increasing their damage. It needs to have at least 70% of its health to activate this ability. It is completely removed when it attacks or when damaged. Its orb inflicts itself with invisibility for 20 seconds. It can drop strange bones or Manducator orbs. The primitive Rika has not only 4 legs to be able to run fast, but also 2 extra claws inflicting poison. They can either melee attack or use their charge attack inflicting knockback and AoE damage. Being able to kill me with infinite regeneration and the best armor of the mod, not overpowered at all. The orb inflicts nausea too. Upon death, they may drop strange bones or Rika fangs. These can be combined with infected flesh to create infectious blade fragments. A variant of primitive Rikas renamed Pale can spawn. It has half the HP of a normal primitive Rika but inflicts double damage. An even more hideous monster is the primitive Summoner, not having a neck but instead longer forearms. They attack by direct contact or by summoning raptors. These will be granted the Rage effect, increasing their damage and speed by 10%. Their orb inflicts Parasite with speed. The summoner may also clone killed parasites by using remains. Upon death, they may drop strange bones or the summoner core. By combining the Manducator and the summoner core, players can create the living core. Having a tail, the primitive yellow eyes are flying ranged enemies. They can shoot poisonous projectiles, inflicting poison, but also degrades gear durability by 4%. They drop strange bones or yellow eye bones. The latter is crafted into the hardened boned handle. All drops from the primitive parasites combined create a new living weapon set, consisting out of an axe, bow, cleaver, sword, and a scythe. The axe inflicts corrosion. This effect will deal damage to the armor over time, like the poison effect but for your armor instead. The sword applies bleeding, damages targets over time. The damage is doubled whenever they move. The scythe doesn't have a special ability. The cleaver inflicts the viral effect, whereas the bow will add additional damage each second the bow is being pulled. After the arrow is shot, the damage of the arrow will be multiplied through the bonus damage. Apart from these new mobs, Stage 1 backhands normally grow into Stage 2, whereas this stage will slowly start to develop into Stage 3. Having a total of 12 summoning points, the Stage 3 backhand can summon raptors for 1 point, assimilated mobs and flying carriers for 3 points, however other mobs are unlocked for an exchange of 6 points. These include primitive parasites, but also new entities. The heavy carriers are gigantic grey lumps exploding into raptors, buglins, and yellow eyes. The explosion inflicts the viral effect, whereas the area around it will be covered with Coth and poison. It's possible to not make them release any mobs by killing them while they're on fire. Another mob they can spawn in is the Vigilant. These can summon Caesars for support or shoot a projectile creating poison clouds. The orb applies Hunger 4, Mining Fatigue 4 and Lila 4 to all non-parasitic creatures. This new effect needs to stack to level 7, so 30% of the entity's total health will be dealt as damage to them. Parasites are granted Speed 4. They drop Noxious Brains, creating the substantial lure, subtracting 50,000 points upon use. The bulky warden with 2 horns emerging from its back can also be summoned by a Stage 3 beacon. This can as well summon Caesars, or use their limbs to slam them on targets, knocking them back. Its orb grants Absorption 4 to a parasites, while all enemies are inflicted with Hunger 4, Lila 4 and Mining Fatigue 4. They drop Noxious Brains. Having a long neck that ends in a row of teeth, the Overseer has not only 4 legs, but multiple tentacles emerging from its stomach. Flying in the air, these can also summon Caesars, crush prey with their teeth, or shoot an explosive projectile. They drop Noxious Brains. Lastly, the Stage 3 beacon can summon a light bomber, having multiple tentacles and various pulsating growths at the front of their body. These can summon Caesars or create bombs, destroying landscape. They drop Noxious Brains. Stage 3 beacons can also create bombs, inflicting the viral effect. Alongside these consequences, fishing won't grant items anymore. Sleeping adds 50,000 points, chance of the reinforcement system and the passive points gaining is increased. A new mob will also naturally spawn, the Thrall. The torso being split apart, this creature is truly a nightmare. Its head is held by a disfigured spine. The only way how to attack is by crushing its prey between the 2 jaws that were once a torso. Upon death, it can drop strange bones, infected flesh, or altered tendons. Parasitic Cyst. All parasites have an internal inventory, where blocks that were broken are stored. When the parasite dies, despawns, its inventory becomes full, or randomly, if their inventory is not empty, they will place a glutinous cyst, which contains their inventory. After some time, the cyst will start to consume the items inside, generating 2 points for every item destroyed. When there are no more items it can consume, it will turn into a vacuous cyst, which can be destroyed by parasites. Evolution system. Before moving on with the different phases, there's a crucial part of the evolution missing. Whenever assimilated mobs kill 5 aggressive mobs, and there are 3 assimilated mobs nearby, they will melt into moving flesh, subsequently merging into one random primitive parasite. If an assimilated human or villager kills 5 skeletons, it transforms into a host, while an assimilated adventurer needs 15 kills to evolve into a thrall. A host is a towering black mass with multiple skeletons sticking out of it. They can only move when underground and are incapable of movement when on the surface. While moving underground, they'll release residue. Keep in mind, this inflicts entities with the Coth Effect and has a minimal chance to create a stage 1 beacon. They may also throw bombs, inflicting the viral effect. Another ability is to summon raptors while underground, also teleport again only underground. Teleportation can only occur when there are 3 full blocks below it and where it wants to teleport to, and the sum of all blocks' hardness must be lower than 10. This creature needs 40 kills to transform into a herd, an even larger tower of skeleton bodies. It is almost the same entity, only they will now summon manglers instead. The herd attacks by slamming its large tentacles at the target, inflicting knockback and AoE damage. Upon death, they may drop diseased hearts. All primitive parasites will evolve into adapted parasites as soon as they kill 10 hostile mobs, being hit by lightning when the transformation occurs. Adapted parasites. Within this category, there are 7 mobs, all in an evolution of the primitive mobs. Apart from the same abilities that primitive parasites have, these adapted ones can also puke up residue, having a chance to spawn in a beacon. Upon death, they may explode, leaving adapted remains, and there's a chance that the reinforcement system is activated. For all entities, the orb effects stayed the same, only the potency was increased, and the effect Needler 3 was added for non-parasites. All adapted parasites drop the same items, but instead of infected flesh, they grant toxic lungs. This can be used to craft the stable lure, which subtracts 5,000 points. The adapted Arachnida has the same abilities like its former evolution, using the string to pull enemies in and then leap onto them. The adapted Bolster possesses extra 2 bloody claws that it uses to slash enemies apart. It grants parasites regeneration 4 in a radius of 24 blocks. Developing more arms, the long arms has even grown a full mouth. It uses its tentacle to swing them around, while the damage decreases for every HP they lose. The Manducata has developed a hump with 2 extra tentacles. They still have the same invisibility ability. The Rika possesses now extra tentacles under its hideous grin. They still can use either melee combat or perform a charge attack. A wide open mouth with teeth on each side has the adapted summoner. Not only can they summon raptors, but also assimilated humans, cows, or wolves. Lastly, the primitive Yellow Eye has developed a whole bizarre body. Instead of only being a ranged class, these adapted beings can even melee attack by swooping towards the targets or summoning a lethal greenish blob. Phase 5. The threshold of 1 million unlocks the beginning of Phase 5. Colonies are now unlocked and can be activated by Stage 4 dispatches. Not only does this buff parasites, but they also build structures and spawn workers. This is currently still work in progress and disabled by default. The passive point gaining and reinforcement system activation chance were increased. All disguised assimilated mobs will drop their disguise. Within this stage, beacons of Stage 2 will instantly evolve into Stage 3, whereas Stage 3 grows slowly into Stage 4. Beacons will also now ignore summoning cooldowns. Stage 4 beacons are the last evolutionary stage, opening its main tentacle to reveal its full structure. These can summon lower tiered beacons, can instantly evolve assimilated mobs or walking heads into primitive parasites, and primitive parasites into adapted parasites. Stage 4 beacons will take damage over time and die if the current dimension is at Phase 2 or lower. Another feature has also been unlocked: nodes. Parasite Biome. As soon as the node is spawned in by a Stage 4 beacon, the Parasite Biome is starting to emerge. The structure will convert every inch it finds into biome blocks. The core is covered by reddish blocks, working as protection. A total of 20 nodes can exist in one dimension, but need to be at least 10,000 blocks apart. If more nodes exist at once, parasites would spawn with more buffs. With 3 nodes, speed 2 is granted, and with 4 nodes, fire resistance. Invisibility when there are 7 nodes existing. By default, they can only spawn within the End, Nether, or the Overworld. As long as the stage 4 backend that generated a node is alive, no matter if the node is destroyed, another one will be spawned by the stage 4 backend after a few seconds. Within the biomes, new mobs alongside already encountered parasites and assimilated mobs can spawn. This new subspecies is so-called preeminent parasites, including 8 new entities. All of them can summon one entity called Sucker. These flying parasites look like connected balls by some brown and yellow materials. When it comes close to an enemy, it can either explode or deploy a orb. Its orb inflicts non-parasites with hunger, needler, mining fatigue, and wither 5. It can also steal experience. Upon death, they may activate the reinforcement system or explode, leaving behind preeminent remains. All of them drop noxious brains. Firstly, there's the Boggle, an insectoid entity with multiple tentacles. These ranged combatants use exploding projectiles to damage enemies. They can turn invisible, which will only break when they are damaged, and shoot its projectile or if its health goes below 40%. Resembling an ant with a larger abdomen, this entity called the Colony Carrier will apply Regeneration 3, Foster 3 and link to nearby parasites. Foster is a new effect with which parasites will have their adaptation to damage sources increased over time, if they have adapted to a damage source. More about this behavior later. Having no face or a head, the Haunter can either attack by direct contact or shoot fast homing projectiles. Swelling with a pulsating red growth, the Heavy Bomber releases bombs that destroy blocks but also summons mobs. These include Overseers, Vigilants, Marauders and Monarchs. The last 2 are new mobs. Monarchs resemble a scorpion with long spider legs. These can summon Caesars, shoot web projectiles, charging short distances, and spawn Buglins when attacked. The orb applies Hunger, Needler, Mining Fatigue, and Wither 4. It can also steal experience from you. Upon death, it drops noxious brains. The other mob, called Marauders, have 2 long tentacles growing from the top of their body. These can summon Caesars or inflict melee damage by crushing its enemy under the tentacles. Marauder's second melee attack can grab nearby mobs, which will then be punched to death by the Marauder. After the attack ends, all nearby parasites will be granted the Rage effect. The orb inflicts Hunger, Needler, Mining Fatigue and Weakness 4. It also steals experience. Lastly, the Wrath looks quite similar to the Bogle. They spawn in a group of up to 2 members, shooting projectiles at their targets. Wraths can go completely invisible. This invisibility is disrupted when it shoots, takes damage, or if its health goes below 40% of its maximum health. Within this biome, trees grow parasitic sacs that drop essential segments. They craft the concentrated lure, removing 1,500,000 points. As soon as the backend and the node is destroyed, one can start cleaning the blocks with a biome purifier. In order to be used, you will need to place one down and right-click it. Black smoke particles will appear after it is successfully used. Purifiers will not remove any parasitic blocks, but will change the ID of the biome to the one of plains. Parasites that are near this block will be granted the Rage effect. Phase 6 to 8! At 30 million points, Phase 6 is unlocked. Adapted parasites and manglers spawn naturally, whereas assimilated mobs and raptors stop spawning naturally. Stage 3 backends grow normally into Stage 4. Passive point gaining and the reinforcement system activation are again increased. All mobs have a 20% chance to be applied the Coth Effect when spawning. Crops grow 10% slower. The world needs to hit the threshold of 100 million for the 7th phase to commence. Grunts and Monarchs spawn naturally. Grunts have long bendable arms and 2 hooves. They don't have special abilities. Once again, passive point gaining and the reinforcement system activation are increased. Mobs have a 40% chance to spawn with the Coth Effect, and crops grow 30% slower. Parasite will also ignore skylight levels when spawning naturally. At 600 million, the last stage begins. Once again, passive point gaining and the reinforcement system activation are increased. Crops grow 60% slower. Mobs have a 60% chance to spawn with the Coth Effect. Apart from these consequences, 2 bosses can naturally spawn in this last phase, the Overlord and the Dreadnought. Being an immense size, ending only in a claw mouth, this entity has various tentacles attached to its body. Flying within the air, it can shoot projectiles that inflict the wither effect or swooping down towards their foes, inflicting knockback. Another ability is to summon ancient ports that explode, summoning raptors or grunts and covering the area with poison. When Dreadnought's HP is brought down to a certain threshold, they will drop their tendrils. If they are not killed enough soon, they will start to spawn Buglands. Standing on multiple hoofs, the Overlord doesn't possess a face, but instead multiple tentacles are growing out of its head. It can melee attack, inflicting knockback and AoE damage, or shoot homing projectiles. Adaptation. If this isn't bad enough for you, parasites can adapt to damage sources. The parasite must receive damage multiple times from a certain damage source in order to adapt it. By the way, they are able to adapt to all damage sources, even fire. Adaptation can be detected each time a parasite is damaged. While red means they are still vulnerable, a specific sound indicates a full adaptation. Players are able to slow or even stop a parasite from adapting using these three methods. By cutting the tendrils from a parasite, the player inflicts it with bleeding and rage. As of now, only adapted Reekers, Summoners, Long Arms, Bolsters, Vigilants and Marauders have tendrils. Some parasites have weak points instead, increasing the damage and also inflicting it with bleeding. One can see these with the hitbox view. Press F3 and B. Adapted Arachnida has the abdomen as its weak point. Overseer's head and parts of its neck function as the weak points, whereas the Warden's hump is the crucial part. For Stage 4 dispatches, it is the ground flower in the center, and Stage 4 beckons the green blob within the top part. Another way is to use the Immalleable Potion. This effect prevents parasites to adapt to any damage sources. Well, currently this can only be obtained through cheats. The last way is to burn parasites. A parasite has a chance to fail to adapt to any damage source while being on fire. All parasites are also a weakness to fire, whereby the damage is increased by a massive amount. Rest of the mod. By feeding a mob either a golden apple or a golden carrot, one grants it the camouflage effect. This has a 70% chance to protect mobs from the Coth Effect. There are also two armor sets that cannot be crafted yet, the Living and the Sentient Armor. The Sentient Armor grants its user access to the Adaptation system, permitting them to adapt to a total of 7 damage types. Adaptation data can be seen by hovering over each item in the inventory, whereas the Living Armor can only do it for 4 damage sources. Quenches are craftable items that purify infested blocks when thrown. Fear is a new effect that can be inflicted on players by parasites. During this effect, full damage will be multiplied, and when players are airborne, all damage is increased. Fear is applied to the player when a parasite knows where they are, or if a parasite sees them. The potency of the effect depends on the tier of parasite. As an example, assimilated mobs inflict potency 1, whereas ancient parasites inflict potency 4. Those are the bosses. There's also a whole sentient weapon set. However, it is as well still uncraftable. To end this showcase, the higher the parasite tier, the more likely it will convert food items into infected flesh. There are probably some features that I have missed, but I'm now at 9 pages of scripts and it's now 45 minutes that I'm talking here. I hope you just enjoyed it and we'll see us in the next video. Stay safe in game. Ciao.